But I've taught Tai Chi all along the way. And now it's not uncommon. I mean, most of the people coming to my Tai Chi classes are at least my age. I'm 69, or still a generation older. I still have people who are a generation older than me in some of my Tai Chi classes. And some people are experiencing memory loss, and it's still, it's very common. And this presentation today that I'm giving is not specifically about the details of Alzheimer's disease, although I will mention that, the most prevalent risk factor for developing Alzheimer's disease is aging. And about 50% of people 85 and older do have symptoms of dementia. It's just part of what happens. And they're trying to figure out, of course, how to deal with it, how to intervene with it. But that's a whole nother story. What I would like to talk about is, how do we take care of ourselves at the same time as we're trying to take care of a loved one? And if you're a caregiver, you know how hard that is. We don't have to talk about how challenging it is. In some ways, it's as demanding as being a new mother or a new father, being a new primary caregiver for an infant with all of these needs that keep changing. In some ways, it's like that, except we're caring for adults who have an adult sense of dignity and entitlement, and the developmental changes that are going on are not progressing upward in the way they are for a young child. They're progressing downward as people lose abilities. But not, I once encountered a book called The Loss of Self, which was about Alzheimer's disease. And I really disagree with that title, because part of my basic approach to this idea of caring for self and caring for others is that we don't lose ourselves. The core self that we arrived on this planet with, and that we live with all of our life, and that's with us until we depart, wherever we go, that is consistent. That self is still consistent. What changes is the ability to communicate and to understand what's going on around us. And because of whether it be stroke, whether it be dementia, whether it be some other gradually disabling illness, our abilities to use the powers that we've had as adult people begin to disappear. But our core sense of who I am as a being, who I love, who I want to be loved by, where I came from, what I want right now. I think all of those things in my long experience are pretty consistent. And pretty much whatever we've been as a younger person, we are as an old person. But it just may be harder to connect with an individual that has an impairment. And that's what makes caregiving work as easily as possible, is when we can find ways to connect with people and not completely sacrifice ourselves. So I decided a good way to go about this is I have the Spirit of Caregiving alphabet, and I just go through the alphabet sometimes, A through Z, and try to identify what is it that's the most significant thing to think about in caring for self and caring for others that starts with this letter of the alphabet. So I'm going to start out with the letter A, and there are a lot of things that are important, and awareness and attention, but ask. You've got to ask. We have to ask for help. And that can be difficult for some of us, especially for accomplished people who have handled things independently for a long time, especially for, childhood trauma even has something to do with this. If it was not a good idea to ask for help with anything as a kid, or if the expectation was that you shouldn't need to ask, you should figure that out, it's hard to ask as an adult, but we need to ask. And my mother finally, I don't know what finally got her to ask for help that got her to that social worker. I know that it was a very humbling thing for her, because she felt like she should be able to take care of it by herself. This was her mother, for goodness sakes. She should be able to take care of it by herself. I am a big, we're shifting to the letter S right now, but I'm a big fan of support groups. And what people don't understand about support groups is, I've had so many people say this to me when I recommend, it would be so helpful if you went to a caregiver support group, because there's so much knowledge in that group of people. There's so much knowledge in the people on the screen right now. If you've done any caregiving, you know something that would be really helpful to somebody else in a support group that they don't know yet. But what people say to me is, well, I don't want to go and sit with a bunch of people I don't know. And, if I'm having a bad day, sit there and cry, I don't want to do that. And it's like, no. There's a lot of laughter that goes on in support groups, because people start finding the same ridiculous situations rising over and over again that people have found different, very creative approaches to. So when I think of asking for help, really the first resource I think of is a support group, people who are already doing it, people who have done it for a while. That's where the rubber hits the road, is right there. Now, how do you find a support group? Well, that's where we have resources in the Madison area that don't exist in a lot of communities. We have case managers associated with senior centers. We have the Aging and Disability Resource Center, ADRC, which is kind of a one-stop shopping center for, I need help. I have somebody who needs help. I'm trying to take care of them. What do I do? And frankly, that's probably the very first place I would go, is to the ADRC. It's just, I live on the northeast side of Madison. It's just down the road here on Sherman Avenue. And you don't even need an appointment. You can walk in and say, this is what I'm looking for. And if the specialist that would be best for you to talk to is busy, they'll set up an appointment. If they're not seeing someone right then, there you are. I actually went down there when I first qualified for Medicare, and I was trying to figure out the best thing to do for the part of Medicare that we have to pay for. And I just walked in and said, this is what I'm seeking help for. Do I need to make an appointment? They said, no, I think Francis can help you right here. And I just got the best 15 minutes of help that I've got from all of the reading I had done about what I should do. You can also contact the Dane County Area Agency on Aging, which has a caregiver specialist named, I believe, Jane DeBro. And she would be happy to help you access whatever resources you need. So ask. We need to ask. So then we go on to the letter B. We get very busy with what we need to do to help someone. And I have a sister currently, she's 5 years older than me, and she's gradually dying of Lewy body disease. I am not her primary healthcare representative. I am not her power of attorney. I have no legal authority over what happens to her. Because of the work that I've done, I have a lot of thoughts about what could help. I've had a lot of thoughts about what her partner and her son could be doing that would make a difference. But after a while of throwing myself against the wall, I realized there's only so much I can do in that realm now. I've told them what I can tell them. I've given them the information. I can't, let's face it, we can't make anyone do anything ultimately. And I realized all I can do now is be with my sister. When I visit her, I can be with her. That's what I can do. And it feels pretty disempowered on the one hand, but on the other hand, ultimately, if we're caring for anybody, and I would say especially for people who are resistant to care, especially for people who may be confused, especially for people who have always been hard to take care of, and now you have to take care of them, really the way we are with someone is much more powerful than what we're trying to do. And sometimes we have to just give up doing. Often we have to give up doing what we're trying to do for them and just be with them, and just, let it become apparent that whatever they want or don't want, it's like we're still going to be there. We're still going to be there. And that goes a long way. It's kind of like putting money in the bank in terms of having to persuade them to do some of the tougher things that happen along the way. C, communicate. This is not often a strong suit in family systems, I have to observe. It's often the case that certain members of a family system will have affiliations that are closer and certain ones don't get along. And there are generational differences in communication. I'm sure we've all noticed this. And when I think about, I'm a baby boomer, and when I think about my parents' generation and my grandparents as well, that living through the Depression experience that people had, that going off to war and coming back again, I've heard so many stories because I cared for a lot of World War II vets, and so many stories from their wives about how he won't say anything about what happened there. He won't tell anybody what happened. So but he's different. He's different when he came back. We just have to accept that. In terms of, my mother basically learned from her mother, who was widowed early on, just as the Depression was starting. You don't talk about what's hard. You just, chin up and you do what you need to do. But you don't reveal your feelings, because you might cry, which of course is a healthy response to going through a hard time, and actually helps to alleviate our tension when we cry. So finding ways to communicate that work is a big deal. It's a big deal. And sometimes it involves trying again and again and again and again and again, and then, giving it up for a while and trying again. There are lots of, sometimes, particularly if you're caring for somebody who has memory loss or dementia, there are there's very creative communication coming at you from your loved one when people begin to lose their ability to say what they want to say. And you can actually become kind of creative and playful with that, and find a way to laugh about it. And there are times that laughing about anything seems impossible, but again, I go back to how useful caregiver support groups are, because what you hear from people in a group is, I never thought I'd laugh about this, but the most ridiculous things happen sometimes, the silliest misunderstandings. And if we can find a way to laugh about anything, it helps us get through the next hard thing. So communication needs to be something that can be as clear as you can make it, but also as forgiving as you can make it. F, forgiving. We dealt with the D for doing. There's a lot of doing that we have to do. And something I think about now these days when I hear the word do, which was very wise information from Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, who I never watched as a kid. We had Captain Kangaroo, but I've become a big fan of Fred Rogers. And he has said, love is a verb. Love is a verb. It's something we do. Yes, it's something we feel, but where it really gets apparent that it's a powerful thing is when we realize it's not just a static thing. It's something that we have to work at, particularly when things are tough with someone. We have to work at, okay, today, the way I'm going to do my love is I'm going to talk my cranky elder into actually taking a shower. And he or she does not want to do it. And I don't want to have to deal with that part of their life at all, but I have to now. It has to be done. So that's the way I'm going to express my love for my elder today, as I'm going to wrestle with them about getting a shower. And there's going to be a great reward afterward. I have known people who actually have set up a wine bar in a shower to get their loved one in. They'll have a little table with a bottle and a couple of glasses and say, let's just rinse off for a while, and then we'll have a taste of wine. I mean, it is possible to play with some of this, believe it or not. And I also think of D in connection with dignity. And this is what's tough, I know. I don't think there's a one of us sitting here that relishes the idea of someone having to care for our body for us, right? We don't want anybody to have to help us bathe. We don't want anybody to help us wipe our bottoms. We don't want anybody to have to help us to tell us anything, really. We would like, we have an adult sense of dignity and the entitlement to make our own decisions, and to find a way to do the things that for another that an independent adult doesn't want anyone to ever have to do, while still respecting the dignity of that being, is quite a dance. It's quite a delicate dance. Which is, I mean, caregivers are my heroes, because it's a very complex relationship on the one hand. On the other hand, it's very simple. I feel responsible for your well-being and I'm going to help you. So let's find a way that can happen. Let's go to flexibility for F. When somebody is, particularly if they're having neurological changes, whether it be due to one or another kind of dementia, whether it be due to stroke, whether it be due to MS, whether it be due to Parkinson's disease, whether it be due to traumatic brain injury after a fall. I mean, and the other thing is our brains do lose just in the course of natural aging. They lose the acuity that we had when we were younger too. I mean, that's all, just like we lose muscle mass, we lose cognitive function over time. So we try to exercise our bodies and we try to exercise our minds, because that actually helps. Well, there's only so much we're in control of when we have one or another disabling disease. And part of aging, particularly for somebody that has a impairment to the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that has to do with impulse control. When you think somebody is starting to behave in an outrageous way and they're doing it for attention, if that's an unusual characteristic, it may be that there's damage to the amygdala that's happening gradually, and we lose impulse control and we do things that we wouldn't have done otherwise. We lose the flexibility because of brain damage to respond to situations in the way we used to. And what that means for caregivers and care partners is that we have to become even more flexible to compensate for the loss of flexibility that our loved one has. And again, it's a little like, we have a grandson who just turned 3, and we have the equivalent of Zoom meetings with him and his parents because they live across the sea. And we watch his parents work with him in such an amazing way. They're trying to do all the same things I'm talking about. They understand that at that stage of that child's development, it's all about proving that you can do things yourself. That's what it's about. That's, if you're developing, that's what it's about. It's a similar scenario in an older adult who continues to need to prove that they can do things by themselves, but they really can't safely do some things by themselves, and money management is one, and it's a big one. That's an area where people get into trouble pretty early. So to try to find ways to be helpful while constantly emphasizing the fact that you appreciate that this person you're trying to help is a dignified, internally at least, independent human being. So that's another dance. G is for the golden rule. And this is where we get into the ability to imagine what it's like to be the one being cared for. Almost every, not even almost, every major religious tradition in the world has its own wording for this golden rule business. Do unto others as you would have be done unto you. So when we get frustrated or when we get confused about how to help our loved one, when we don't know what to do next, it's really good to step back, take 10 minutes away if you can, and think, okay, I'm going to imagine right now that in my being, I have everything going on that's going on in that person's being right now. Physical, emotional, cognitive. What does it feel like? And what do I need? What would I need? What would I need in order for me to allow someone to help me in that way? What would I need? What would I need to be told? What would I need to be offered? In some ways, when dementia progresses, some things get harder and some things get easier. And sometimes what people really want that helps turn the tide of their emotional distress is pretty simple. I knew a superb wife caregiver who had realized that if I give my husband a piece of lemon pie, he's willing to do almost anything. I just need to keep lemon pie in the house, and then he'll be willing to do almost anything. But then she learned that she had to anticipate as well. And she could tell when he was, and one of the things that happened is that this particular gentleman, he left home and went walking off into the city of Madison, and 24 times his wife had to call the police to track him down because he was just so determined that he need to go. And once he got out the door, and he thought he was going to work, and once he got out the door, then he was looking for her, who he had just left behind at home, but he couldn't find her. So he's wandering around Madison, and finally the police would find him and would bring him home. And he would be so relieved. And he would say, "Why did you leave me? Why did you leave me alone?" So that's a scenario that went on. She started getting a little more facile at noticing when he was just starting to wind up into that state and was going to go out the door. And if she could intervene with a piece of lemon pie right then, it often would settle him down, and he'd eat the pie, he'd sit down, he'd relax, and that day's wandering wouldn't happen. So that's just one example of this kind of process that we sometimes need to go by to help someone who really doesn't know what they need. They really don't know what they need to be helped. So how can we play to the things that they really enjoy and they really like to hear? For some people, it's music. For some people, it's touch, it's physical touch. For some people, it's like if you can put a cat or a dog in their lap, they're good for a long time. And what do you need? As the caregiver, what do you need in the time that you have to feel like you can relax and just let go for a while and settle down? And it's extremely variable, but you need to be able to give yourself that as well. So I want to talk a little bit about hope at this point, and then I think we'll open this up. I do think about caregiving as a spiritual process. And for me, I'm not talking about any particular or specific religious creed, although I have my own, but part of what I include in my own belief system is that I'm not, now and then people will say, "Wow, I went to this, incredible garden and the sun was setting and it was so beautiful. And I had a spiritual experience there. Well, part of what I believe is that we're not so much physical beings that occasionally have spiritual experiences as we're spiritual beings who have physical experiences. At core, we're spiritual first and we're embodied. And that spiritual sense of self, that spirit, that soul, that inner self, however you want to think of it, that's where we really connect with someone else, when we connect with their spiritual self, when we really feel a connection with them. And I've worked with many an older adult who has lost the use of language. They cannot speak with words, but they speak with their eyes. They speak with their feeling. They speak with a voice that does not come out in words. And you know this when you have a spiritual connection with someone. I sometimes, again, I go back to if you're holding an infant or a young child and they can't speak yet, but you're looking into their eyes and they're looking into theirs, and they feel safe, they feel comfortable. You feel this deep connection between you that gets you through the next 3 nights when the child is up 4 times a night crying. I mean, that's possible between any of us at any age. So when I think about caregiving as a spiritual process, I think about the fact that we are trying to do for others. We are trying to do for another as we wish would be done unto us, even when it's really hard. That's what we're trying to do. We are trying to make love a verb, not just a nice feeling you feel and you send a card and it says you feel it, but you're trying to be there and do things for somebody. We have to acknowledge the fact, it gets very clear when we're caregiving for someone, especially someone older than us, that life is change. Life is change. And everything involved in remembering what you're sorry to have lost, fearing your own impending aging and dying process, and all of that toughest stuff that comes along with living a mortal life is right front and center when you're caregiving for someone else. And the person you're caring for may not think that, I'm thinking about my dear father-in-law who, when he had lived 20 years longer than he was supposed to everybody's delight, but he had pretty much completely worn his loving wife down to a nubbin, because the research tells us that after about 3 years of intensive caregiving, burnout happens. People are feeling pretty fried to a crisp, and she had done it for 20 years. And he said one night at dinner, after 20 years of her caring for him, I'm feeling so good, I think I could live to 115. And she was like, oh, good. And when he died, she mourned him terribly. She missed him terribly. But we do run out of gas, and we run out of hope sometimes. We're worn down from the emotional and the physical work that we're doing. And sometimes we think, I don't feel hopeful about anything anymore. This is just going on and on. And the most useful concept I've ever encountered about hope is that it doesn't just arise by itself. Hope is a thing we decide. We have to decide, I need to have an attitude of hopefulness to support me and sustain me. How do I get that? How do I need it? It often has to do with connecting with some other people who are struggling with the same thing, and you find out that you can buoy each other up. You can support each other up. It may also come from just identifying some very specific steps in each day. Okay, if I have 5 minutes to go outside in the morning and breathe the morning air and look at the sky and hear the birds and see what the season is doing, I feel like I've just had an infusion that can carry me through the next couple of hours. You have to get specific about it. And then I'm returning to ask again, which is where I started. And then I'm going to find out if you have anything you would like to say or would like to ask, if you would like to ask about. But coming back to ask again, I've heard from many caregivers over the years that there are people around me, who say they want to help. They know, I'm taking care of my husband. I'm taking care of my wife. I'm taking care of my disabled adult child. There are many, I'm taking care of my sibling. There are many possibilities here. They say, well, let us know if there's anything we can do to help. And I'm too busy to tell them what they can do to help. Well, I've heard from many a caregiver over the years that you need to be, so these are the seasoned caregivers that have actually found a way to get help. You need to tell people specifically something they can do. Make a list of specifically what somebody can do. I really need the oil changed in my car. Can somebody do that for me? Yes, I can do, that's a specific thing someone can do. I really need somebody to do, maybe just a couple of weeks to do a big paper product run for me at, I don't care whether it's Woodman's or Target or something. I don't have, yes, I can do that. I need somebody to just help me get the windows washed so that it's better. Yes, I can do that. I need somebody to stay with my husband for 2 hours every Friday afternoon. And I understand if that's not possible, but well, I can do it some afternoons, somebody would say. So just to specifically ask for what would help. And that can help make hope happen, because you know that some of your needs can actually get met pretty easily if you can ask and if people can offer. Often people want to offer, they just don't know how to do it. And they don't want to invade anybody's privacy either. And there's also one other thing, there's often this sense of, well, I don't know what to say. I know they're going through a tough time over there. It's like after somebody dies, sometimes somebody says, well, I really like to say something, but I don't know what to say. And the things to say in those cases are very simple. Like, is there anything I can do to help you? Tell me something, I'll do it. Or I'm so sorry you're going through this. If it helps to talk, I'm willing to hear. So I'm going to stop blathering right now. And I want to check in with you and find out if you would like to share any of your expertise, because I imagine you're here because this is an issue that's kind of up front and center for you. If you have suggestions, disagreements, it's okay. It's okay with me if you think I'm just plain old wrong about some of the things I've said, because in your experience, it's like this. That will be very useful to someone. So is there anybody who would like to do so? Marcia, I see your square is green.
Do you know who's on there?
She's really not yet, but she'll be able to we'll take her in.
Anybody?
I have a guest here in the room, Jody, that would like to ask a question.
Yes,
Can you hear me, or do I need to go move over to our computer?
I can hear you.
Oh, you can. Excellent.
Yep.
It's not necessarily a question, but it ties into. For me, I found the biggest struggle when overseeing and caring for my mother, who just recently passed, and helping my dad, who was the primary caregiver, was.
Can you hear me?
It's an A for acceptance.
Oh.
I struggle.
Can you
to
hear
accept-
Marcia?
I
Yes, we can
struggled
hear
to
you very
accept where she was, and I tried to fix her for so long. And then when I finally came to the realization that I just need to accept this is where she's at, and to your point, to be with her and to love her where she was at. That was a big kind of turning point for me. It was not easy, but I felt like I should be able to help fix it.
Yes, yes. Yes.
And for me just to finally just let go of that, realizing that I couldn't fix her trauma. Unfortunately, in her dementia and her Alzheimer's stage, she lived in trauma a lot.
Yeah, I'm so
So
sorry.
and a lot of it was distorted trauma. It wasn't anyhow. And I tried to correct, I'm like, well, that's not really how it happened, Mom. That's not my experience. And I'm like, that did nothing but exasperate the situation. So anyhow, so my A is acceptance, which helped lead me to being present and loving to her.
Beautifully put. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I have, I don't want to make any gender assumptions. We're not supposed to do that anyway these days, but I have noticed that particularly when husbands and sons are caring for wives or mothers, there is often, and it's not that women can't experience this when caring for somebody too, but there's often this feeling of, if I can't find a way to fix this, I have failed. I'm thinking right now about, he was a retired economics professor, and his wife had been a brilliant woman, and still, she still had her emotional brilliance in her, but she was in the latter stages of dementia. And he just kept trying to make Maxine the way she used to be in one way or another. And it's like, he would even say, I'm trying to reteach her how to use her fork appropriately at the table, because she's not doing that. And she would be so embarrassed if she knew she can't use the fork in that way. So I'm trying to teach her how to do that. And I would say, Dick, Maxine has known how to do that for a long time, but she's not able to put what she's known about that into that physical expression anymore and do that. And I don't think you're going to be able to do that. He said, no, I think I am. And in several ways he would do that. And finally, I actually asked him if he would give a talk to a group of family caregivers about this, because he finally got to the point where he realized, I can't, it's not working. I can't fix it. Just as you said, I can't fix it. I have to deal with the fact that this is what's happening and make her as comfortable and happy as I can, because I can't turn this around. So I think you're in very good company with that. And thank you for sharing that. It's one of the harder parts about being a family caregiver, being, I've been on both sides. I've been a family caregiver now, and I've also was like a professional or paraprofessional caregiver along the way. And, when an adult day center participant who was not safe staying alone during the day, but was living with their family at night, when that person would come in the door, I was able to just really enjoy all kinds of aspects of them, because I didn't know what they had been like before. So there was nothing that I was grieving. There was nothing that I was missing about the way they used to be. I could just totally enjoy them the way they were right then and there. Whereas for family members, we know what we're losing. We know what's missing. We know what we long for. And that emotional burden, it's painful to begin with. And it can also encourage us to try to get some of the old stuff back again. But we're really not in control of that. So thank you for that sharing. That was very powerful. And Marcia was here, and now I think she's left, unfortunately. She was trying to come in and say something, but.
We have someone at Goodman with something to share.
Yes, please.
Okay.
They're talking to that.
You can just talk. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm not in a caregiving situation of my husband, 49 years yet, but my sister, who's 83, lives with her husband, who's 90. And one thing that I do for them is I get my magazines at my house. I got a whole stack of magazines for her. And I bring them over to her husband. And what he does is he cuts them out. He cuts out the labels. And sometimes he has to tear the label off. Sometimes he has to cut it out. Sometimes he has to turn it over and the label's on the opposite side of the magazine and stuff. That's something I do for my sister. And also I heard that when people have dementia, I heard that they can, they listen to music. Music is a very good thing for people to listen to. But I haven't gotten to that point yet, but that's what I heard is good for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the magazine idea. People need something to do. You know, we need purpose. I mean, that's just the way we're made. We need something to do, and handling things, being able to manipulate things, whether it be cutting out things, whether it be sorting nuts and bolts and screws, whether it be, gosh, I've known many a really confused older woman who could make a perfect apple pie. I have to tell you, all of those skills are still in there. And as far as music goes, it's well established now that our musical memory functions somewhat separately from our verbal speaking memory, from the rest of our memory. And yes, there are an amazing number of musical experiences and songs that are in the minds of people who can sing along with something, that a song that they learned a long time ago, and it's still there for them, but they have trouble just speaking a sentence regarding what they want. And it's enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. So definitely music is a great thing.
There's a wonderful documentary on Glenn Campbell's last tour. Glenn Campbell died of Alzheimer's.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And his family, anyhow, the documentary goes into that very thing about that music part. He could still play that guitar because he was a world-class guitarist.
Yes, he was.
And the lyrics sometimes left him. And so there was a scroll below where he would get the lyrics, but he could remember the music. And anyhow, I can't remember the name of the documentary, but if you look up Glenn Campbell documentary, last tour.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And more recently, Tony Bennett as well, who's moving into late stage Alzheimer's, and you know, he has trouble getting to the stage. He had trouble, you know, just getting ready to do it. And once he was on stage and the lights were on, he delivered an exquisite, word perfect concert. And when it was over, he was exhausted and wasn't sure how to get off the stage. I mean, musical memory is a very important thing. We should all be singing more right now, folks.
Yes.
Should be upping up our musical memory and at least listening right now.
I have a question that's not about Alzheimer's or dementia. The person I care for is very sharp mentally, very communicative, but she's deteriorating physically. And the frustration is, you know, I do things around the house, cooking, cleaning. She said, always is saying, can I help? What can I do to help? And there's so many things that she cannot do. And it's kind of frustrating on both of our parts, because I would love to see her get more involved, but the fact is she can't. You know, it would just, you know, if she tried, it would make it more difficult. So I'm just wondering, you know, how I would easily deal with that.
Well, I wonder, Bill, if you could be a little proactive if you know what you're going to do in the kitchen, if you know what you and your wife are going to fix, if you could think of a couple components of that she could do, whether it be, okay, you know, we're going to need some chopped onions in this, so let's have her chop some onions for us. You know, almost like setting up a workstation with something specific that it's possible for her to do. Is that conceivable?
And
not the chopping onions.
Yeah.
Not the chopping onions part. She has tremors, so we'd be chopping her fingers.
Well, I mean, that's just an example.
Right,
but
exactly. I understand.
Yeah. I don't know.
Folding the laundry has worked as a tool for me.
Has it?
Yep. I give And
Yeah.
that's a nice one. And the other is oiling and rubbing down furniture. That my father loved to do woodworking. He wants to help. So
Yes.
just the repetitive so those little tasks, I'm learning how to give nice little short tasks, but the laundry has really been amazing to me. So
Folding. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the key here, Bill, is probably, I mean, so when you're saying that this person is not particularly intellectually disabled, is that true?
Yeah, exactly. She's sharp as a tack.
Yeah, so that's a tricky thing, except if she wants to be helpful, you know, I think that there have to be some components of something about putting a meal together that she would be able to do one part of that for you.
That's part of, she was always very, very active out doing the
Right.
gardening and,
Yeah,
you know, everything around the house. And now it's just not possible.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I also wonder about, I guess I wonder about an occupational therapy consultation with the express purpose of, I mean, the doc can make a referral. We would like an appointment with an OT with the express purpose of identifying some things that she can do that would have that she would be able to do. And to be able to have kind of a toolkit of things that are satisfying enough to her to be able to do them, even with the limitation she has.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, without knowing her personality and so forth, I'm not sure what that would be, but I'm sure that there are some activities that could actually leave her feeling like she's contributing. And that's part of it too, is wanting to contribute as well to the family, to the household, just wanting to be helpful, wanting to do something meaningful,
She does all the computer work. She handles the finances and the bookwork and stuff. She's real, you know, adept at that. It's just the physical stuff she misses.
Yeah.
Digging in the dirt and, you know,
Yeah.
weeding the garden and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anyone else who has something they would like to say, ask, wonder? Yes. Somebody who's a new bridge guest. Oh, you
Yeah.
need to be unmuted.
There she go. Oh, she almost had it.
Sharon. Her name is Sharon.
Her name is Sharon. Okay, Sharon, we're just gonna need you to hit that microphone over there and unmute.
Yeah. I can only ask to unmute, but I can't unmute her.
Jody, this is Dina. I'm at Monona.
Hey, Dina.
With Newbridge. I wanted to just comment. I'm at year 3.5 with my 93-year-old mother. And I've hit burnout. I still work full time, but I would not want her to be anywhere else but with me. I love caregiving as a spiritual act. That I found so comforting.
Okay.
I'm gonna sit with that for a bit. And you know, play around with that concept, because it brought a lot of kind of instant good feelings. So I appreciate you putting it in that perspective.
Oh, thank you for that.
really appreciate that.
I want to add something to that, though. It doesn't mean we still need to recognize our physical
Oh,
needs as far as what you do to stay healthy,
Yeah.
right?
yes.
Whether it's nutrition, walking, like
Yes,
what Jody was saying,
Yeah.
just getting
I
outside.
exercise every day.
Yes, good. So I was gonna say, so you're doing those kinds of self-care things,
I have to.
which you have to, and I know that, that's,
Yep.
I have to do
Yep.
that, and I still do, because I'm still overseeing the care for my dad.
Yeah, yep,
But yes,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a balance, you know.
yeah, it's a balance.
Yeah.
And what, we do need enough sleep.
Mm.
That there are times that can become really an issue. And, when we're not getting our sleep, I mean, this may sound silly, but it won't to people who have ever really loved a pet that they live with. I have 2 geriatric cats who are nearing the end of their lives. And my sleep is disrupted a lot now in responding to one issue or another that needs to be cared for. And I'm finding tools that can help me. But I've noticed that, my disrupted sleep really impacts my emotional state pretty powerfully. And, sometimes, and that's something somebody might be able to do if you're in a situation with your loved one where, there's a lot of night wakefulness that can go on associated with dementia. And, maybe somebody can come in occasionally and I won't even go there right now, but maybe somebody can come in occasionally and just kind of take the night watch for you so you can get a solid night's sleep. But yeah, we do need to, it's when we feel the least able to step away and take even a few minutes for ourselves, when we have that feeling of, God, I just, I'm gonna bust here, I'm gonna break, but there's no way I can step away because I have to deal with this right now. That's when it's really important to just give yourself even a few minutes. You really have to give yourself a few minutes away. And, there probably won't be any disaster that happens in those few minutes. And if you stay, you might become the disaster because there's only so much we can do. We have to let ourselves have let some steam off. Yes. So we still,
I cannot unmute you.
yeah, I would love to have you unmuted, Sharon, but we can't hear you unless you can get your mic unmuted. I'm sorry about that.
There she is.
All right, is that better?
Did it. Yay, good for you.
Okay. I found that when I was taking care of my mom, the hardest thing was remembering what she used to be able to do because she was such a people person, and then becoming the person she became where she didn't even know who I was.
Yeah,
And that was very, very hard for me.
yes.
I finally had to tell my sister, I can't do it anymore. I said I would see her one last time and that's it. I saw her and the next day she died.
Did she?
So I was able to say my goodbye.
Oh, I'm so glad you could do that.
Yeah.
That is very painful. I remember,
That was important.
yes, it's very important.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember I didn't see my mother cry very often, but one day she came home after visiting my grandma and she cried and she said, she thought I was Della. Now, Della was grandma's sister and grandma didn't even like Della. And my mother said, she thought I was her sister that she didn't even like. And I know it shouldn't feel so hard, but it feels hard. That is really hard. That is. I'm just glad you were able to go and see her again before she died. And I'm sorry for that. I don't even like to call it a journey because journey is a word that gets overused. I'm sorry for having to endure that whole period of time when she was declining, but you were a good sister. And she knew it, whatever she was able to say or not say, do or not do, she knew that you were a good sister. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess one last thing I'd like to say is that it's okay to quit. It's okay to,
Wow.
it's really hard to believe, but there is a time, depending upon circumstances, when you may feel like I cannot do this anymore. And usually when you hit that point, what's going on, it's definitely not good for you. It may not even be as good as it could be for your relative because you are struggling as well for your loved one. So then I go back to asking again, which is, so where are the resources I need to help me? Because I have to quit doing it the way I'm doing it right now, whatever that is. It's hurting me too much. It's not good for me physically. It's not good for me emotionally. I'm angry all the time. So how can something else happen? And that can be anything from figuring out how to get somebody else to come in for periods of time, to figuring out another living environment for your loved one. And I am the first to understand that, you know, having more money makes a lot more things possible than not having much money. But that's really when it's time to go and you know, talk to somebody at the Area Agency on Aging or the Alzheimer or the Aging and Disability Resource Center. Just say, this is what I've been doing and I feel like I can't do it anymore. And I don't know what my options are. I don't know what we can do, but I know I need help. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Jody.
We have one more comment here from the Goodman Center.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, where's the microphone?
right
Oh, right
here.
there? Okay, well, my comment was when they were talking about breaking points earlier. I once knew someone who had an incredible amount of kids. Mothers about when being a caregiver for a baby gets to be just too much of a much. Her comment was, well, we all have different breaking points. And she said that often it can be relieved by something relatively simple. She said she just, so she wouldn't disturb the baby or anyone else, she just go get alone in a room and then throw something as hard as she could against the wall, like an ashtray or something.
Yeah.
And that would do it. So those people who feel they're at their breaking point, maybe there's something relatively simple that they could do that could get them through it. Because she had no end of babies. All the other women were marveling, saying, my God, I just had one or two. It nearly killed me. How on earth did you do it? Getting alone in a room, throwing an ashtray against a wall. That did it.
And they weren't even teenagers yet.
No.
Well, yeah, we, you know, physically getting it out is a good thing. I mean, becoming overwhelmed, getting angry, feeling like you're going to burst, these are all normal human emotions, and we're ashamed of them. You know, we tend to be ashamed, especially when there's somebody who's needy that I'm supposed to be responding to in a loving way. And I feel like the exact opposite of that. And there's something wrong with me and I'm ashamed of it. And actually, it's just all normal human emotion. And it's the way that your physical self is expressing the fact that we need some release here. You know, we need to be taken care of too. So there's that old thing about, you know, maybe it's not old to you, it's old to me, that, you know, if you don't have something to give to the person you're caring for, they're not going to get what they need either. So if you're on an airplane and suddenly the oxygen masks drop because the plane is losing altitude, and you hear the captain say, please put on your oxygen mask. We're always supposed to put the oxygen, we think we're supposed to put the oxygen mask on whoever's riding with us that's dependent upon us first. Actually, you have to put it on yourself first so you can continue to think. So you have enough oxygen that you can continue to think about what you need to do next. Put it on yourself first, and then put it on the people you're caring for. So I think that's a good metaphor to think of. You know, if we're on the floor in a pile of ashes because we've just gone up in flames because we can't take it anymore, we can't do anything for anybody that's depending upon us. Exercise is a good way, you know, I mean, just movement is a good way. And I'm
Pickleball.
one of my enduring fantasies when I've gotten really angry about something in the past is I thought I'm going to go to a secondhand store and I'm going to buy a box of old china dishes, and I'm going to go to some place where there's just some rocks and nobody around, and I'm going to throw one dish after another until it breaks, and then everything will be fine. And sometimes just imagining it was helpful. Never done it. I've never done it, but there is something about throwing something and breaking it that relieves some tension.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you all for coming in and sharing what you shared. And I mean, this is it's a huge topic. It's a big, huge topic. And please do access, you know, I'm a reader. There's a lot of stuff written about how to deal with this, but I do want to mention that there are places like the Alzheimer's and dementia. I just lost the word.
Alliance.
Thank you. The Alzheimer's and Dementia Alliance of Wisconsin that offers family care consultations, you know, like when you're dealing with something, and it doesn't even need to mean that you have somebody that's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia. You're having a caregiving issue. There's a professional who will consult with you. Alzheimer's and Disease Resource Center, area agency.
Logins on here.
And
if you find some other caregivers to talk to.
that's
there
right.
you go.
And keep posted at your local senior centers too. Caregiver support groups are popping up all over. And
Yeah.
if you're interested in doing that, we're interested in hearing about it here at the Monona Senior Center. So I would love to get a support pop-up group just so we can touch base and continue with our ABCs. Jody, thank you so much.
Yes.
And I would love to have you back real soon so we can keep up with this. So
Maybe
Okay,
next.
thank you.
Maybe next year we can all meet in person. Wouldn't that be nice?
very
That's what
good.
I'm hoping for.
Again,
Thanks
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jody. And
Take-
I will have the recording